So to me, as a YouTube content creator and sometimes a freelance videographer, the best lens is... For a bit more context, I need to add this detail. The Canon EF 24-70 f2.8 Mark I was introduced back in 2002. 10 years later, in 2012, Canon released the version 2 of the EF 24-70 f2.8 lens, which is this one, the Mark II. It costs $1,900, and you can use it on older DSLR cameras and also mirrorless cameras with an adapter. And this is the latest version, released in 2019, the RF 24-70 f2.8, designed for Canon's mirrorless cameras. That's right, it works only on mirrorless cameras. Price, $2,400. This is the US price, and if you live in Europe, you need to add the import taxes for both EF and RF lenses. Okay, so generally speaking, let's see what's similar between these two lenses. Obviously, they are both 24-70mm lenses. Their aperture can go as wide as f2.8, and it's constant on the entire zoom range, which is awesome, especially for video creators, because you don't have to change the exposure every single time you zoom in and zoom out. Both lenses extend while zooming, and I noticed that the EF Mark II extends a bit more than the RF. But to be honest, I would have liked the newer RF lens to have internal zoom without extending, like for example the 17-40mm EF from Canon. I mean, this lens wins against dust every single time, even though both 24-70mm lenses are weather sealed, because we're talking about the L series, folks. They both have 82mm filter threads, and they both have zoom rings, manual focus rings, and autofocus switches. 9 rounded blades for the diaphragm, so you don't have to worry about that creamy blur behind your subject. Now, because I like to be honest, I will tell you some differences that I couldn't find in other YouTube videos. If you put both 24-70 side by side, you'll definitely say, hey, I'm going to choose the EF version because it's shorter, right? Well, no. If you want to use the EF version on a mirrorless camera, like for example the EOS R, you need this adapter that comes for free usually when you buy the EOS R. Now, if you look at them once again, you'll see that they are similar in length. Okay, so what about the weight? The RF version has 900 grams and the EF has 805 grams. But if you attach the adapter that has 110 grams, the total weight will be 915 grams, so it weighs even more than the RF lens. Also, here's an interesting one. When I put the EF lens on the EOS R, I have more room for my fingers when holding the camera. The grip feels a bit better. I measured 17mm between the lens and the grip when using the EF lens and 13mm when using the RF version. Let me make this clear, it's not an issue at all, but it's a difference that nobody talks about. And what's really important as a difference between the two lenses is that the EF Mark II doesn't have image stabilization built in like the new RF. You won't encounter issues while filming at 24mm because it's wide enough, but when you zoom in at 70mm, you clearly see a difference between the two lenses. I mean, the EF version has definitely some micro shaking while the RF doesn't, and the image is smooth. This is a huge advantage for the RF version if you are a freelance videographer, you shoot vlogs, or you make YouTube content, because these could be some scenarios when you hold the camera in your hands. The minimum focus distance is 38 centimeters on the EF Mark II and only 21 centimeters on the RF version, which makes it kind of a macro lens, and this is definitely a plus for both photo and video projects that you may have. Now, this soft zoom that you see in the corners while moving the focus ring is called focus breathing. I'm not even touching the zoom ring right now. Ideally, a very, very good lens doesn't have this at all. This is a test made with the EF 24-70 Mark II, and you can clearly see this focus breathing thing. This can cause issues in the viewing experience on a video, or it could ruin a focus stacking series when taking macro photos. And I was surprised to see that the RF 24-70 doesn't have this problem, and the focus breathing is barely noticeable. It's very small from my point of view, and for me, this is a big advantage because I shoot videos a lot. And you probably know this by now that each lens from the RF lineup has a function ring, and this 24-70 RF is no exception. Not everybody loves the function ring. Not everybody's using it, but I do. I like to set it to control the ISO value when I'm filming. You can also link the aperture or the shutter speed to the function ring. I find it useful. So definitely this is a benefit for the RF lens. And from my tests, I saw a smoother focusing when using the RF 24-70. And that's because this new version of the lens is using nano ultrasonic motor technology that creates a much smoother transition between the focus points. The EF version is ultrasonic as well, but you can definitely tell the difference between the two lenses from the audio noise perspective as well. The EF version tends to be a bit louder than the RF, which is almost completely silent when focusing. The eye tracking, in my opinion, works well on both lenses, but I see a slight improvement on the RF version. I mean, the focus is a bit faster. However, it was a bit weird to find out that both lenses struggled when I left the frame and re-entered. The RF did a better job than the EF, but overall, I found that they were stuck sometimes for 1 or 2 seconds when I was at 70mm f2.8 and I re-entered the frame. This is an extreme test, of course, but it was an interesting comparison. Now let's take a look at some photos that I shot with both lenses in the same locations using a tripod. So you will always see the EF version on the left and the RF version on the right. This was shot at 24mm 2.8. I don't see a difference in sharpness, to be honest with you. I did see other videos on YouTube with portraits where the RF was definitely sharper than the EF, but in my case, not really. Okay, the next one, this was at 70mm 2.8, and I don't see a difference, again, in sharpness, but I see a difference in the blur quality this time. The RF definitely looks better, more pleasant, it's more soft, a bit more creamy if you want, and the colors blend in very well. This is a shot at 70mm again, but at f8 this time. Again, I'm concentrating to see if the sharpness is better on the RF lens or not. And I'm really trying to be honest with me in this case. It could be a very, very small improvement in the sharpness on the RF, but this honestly is unnoticeable. Okay, so this was my very, very short check for the sharpness and the blur quality on the photo side. So, to me, as a YouTube content creator and sometimes a freelance videographer, the best lens is the newer RF version. In my opinion, it focuses faster, smoother, and the image stabilization is important to me when shooting videos handheld. It also has the function ring that I consider useful sometimes, and a really cool feature that I love is the minimum amount of focus breathing. It's a pricey investment, but it's a long-term investment. I'm not taking it off the camera 99% of the time. I didn't have any 24-70mm lenses until this point, so it made sense to me to buy the RF version right from the start because I also have the Canon EOS R. And I think that if you have the EF Mark I and you use it with an adapter on a Canon mirrorless camera, it's still worth it to upgrade to the RF version, even if the investment is with $500 more than buying the EF Mark II, because you have benefits on long term. Anyway, the future is mirrorless. I think everyone knows this already. If you have the EF Mark II, however, I think the upgrade is necessary only if you shoot video. If you just focus on the photo side and you don't want to invest right now in the latest and greatest, you'll be just fine by keeping the EF Mark II and using it with an adapter on a mirrorless system from Canon. Now, if you find some value in this video, I'm sure you'll love to watch this one as well. I'm Christy. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next video, and make sure you hit the thumbs up.